Hey guys, what is going on? U-Rounder here, and we are isolating Jack 5 suited. Alright, going to do another very short video today. I'm going to try and keep my thought processes short and succinct, and I'm going to hopefully make the audio a little bit better, but we'll see how that goes. No, we can't pull the pair on the flop blind versus blind. When our opponent checks, we can go ahead and bet. We probably need to bet 2 streets if he calls, but we do want to protect our 7. So this is a protection bet, and then if he does check call, depending on how the river interacts with the ranges, we could bet on that 2. Fair question. On table 4, if he had called and then the 2 had come, would we have barreled again? I think so. I think we would barrel, trying to take him off of a 10, which would be a big part of his bet flop check turn range, I think. Sure, we can 3-bet with 2-4 suited. Actually, our small blind 3-betting range should be fairly linear, so I don't know if this needs to necessarily be in it. We could look, but it probably doesn't necessarily need to be in there. As you guys can see, I did clean up the overlay a bit. What I did is I took away the pot odds and I made it so that the street action only shows up if it's relevant, and it doesn't show up pre-flop either. Jack 9 off. Look at me trying to open this Jack 9 off suit. That's a little much. I am trying to open up my ranges a bit, but I think Jack 9 off from MP might be right now. I'm not saying I won't ever do it, but right now I think that's a bit ambitious. The thing is I am starting to see the value in just getting to the flop a lot and then abusing some exploitable spots in the player pool and exploitable spots against specific players once we get a bit of a read on them. One thing I do want to do is go in and clean up my HUD a bit, make it a little bit more relevant for the stuff that I want to look at, as well as the stats that normalize as quickly as possible. One of the things that I think it was in a live stream on Twitch that Nick Howard was talking about. He mentioned that if somebody c-bets out of position twice, that's a pretty good sample size. In a spot where the optimal c-bet is like 30% or 20%, it's not insignificant. And that makes sense, right? I know that I don't want to go off on a tangent because I'm just supposed to be focusing on poker, but I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast where they were talking about the effects of ketosis on, I think, like mice and their ability to withstand hypoxia, which is lack of oxygen. And they did one trial on like 6 or 7 mice or something. And don't quote me on these numbers, but the results were like staggering. It was like a 200% increase in how long the mice lived, or more. It may have been more. It was like 2 or 3 times. But one of the questions was like, well, isn't that a small sample? It's only 6 mice. And the answer is that even small samples can be relevant if the variation in results is high enough. So in other words, like, yeah, 6 mice is a small sample, but the fact is it's not like it was a 2 or 3% increase, which is, could be like small error. It's like a 200% increase. There's like nothing in the world that would explain that other than whatever the control, other than the hypothesis they were testing. So that's kind of a long way to get to it, but point is if you have significant deviations, it takes much smaller sample sizes, which is important to think about because, we always look at our HUDs and think that, a lot of these stats don't matter until you have 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 hands. But, if the deviation is so great that there is a low probability of it falling into a standard deviation of optimal, then it is relevant. I think we can call, even though, it's under the gun versus MP, but again, this is a good hand, 1. And then 2, this player has 3-bet 2 out of 3 times. So he looks like he's a little maniacal and just sat down at the table. So he could be just a sort of, maniacal player. I don't think this is a bad spot to call, and if we get a club on the turn, we can jam, or if we get a he doesn't quite do it. He's betting a little bit larger than half pot, so it's not like he's giving us a great price. This is definitely an exploitable fold. I think in a vacuum, this would be a call, and honestly, against what we know about that player, maybe it's even more of a call. So definitely a hand I should mark, because that might be a spot where I am. Now, the only thing that I think is on my side is the bet size. So because it's a larger size, I don't need to defend as often. However, just on a whole, this is like a hand I would always fold. Like getting into a 4-way pot with king jack off doesn't seem great. We'll just see bet here, and this is going to be a raise. This would be a good raise with air as well. When we hit the 8 on the turn, it's a little bit interesting because we expect his range to have a lot of jacks in it. So we have some showdown value, but it doesn't beat what we think he's usually, right? Like he probably is folding most of his air to that raise. So now he has like 1 pair of hands, which makes it like, I'm not sure barreling the turn there is like a hot spot after we raise the flop. And yeah, it does look like a blocker bet, right? Like betting 1/3 here. It looks like a weak or small pair that just wants to get a cheap showdown, doesn't want to face a large bet. So the question is, like, against the 32-5, do we think like bluff raising here is profitable? The answer is probably no, and we probably can. The other issue is, like, does he do this with like a 5 or a 6? And I think against the 32-5, he sometimes does. I don't think it's common. I don't think we're going to win a ton here, but I actually think that he could be value betting worse occasionally. But I guess we don't get to see it because I timed out. So we'll have to wait a couple days. But I don't think it's like a slam dunk. I don't think it's a slam dunk call, but I actually do think that against that player, against a regular, I think it's a fold because he's just trying to, like, I think pretty clearly just sort of get a call from his value hands. But against a weak player of 33-5, he could be pretty much value betting a worse hand, value owning himself. We get 2 checks again. I'm just going to go ahead and bet here. We do have a gut shot, and we could bluff some rivers, depending on what the river is, and we obviously have to call here. Now he checks. I think we want to just protect our hand. And I think we would just stab 100%. once we float the flop and then he checks the turn. I think we just like 100% stab there, with or without a pair. Turn the volume on the beeps a little bit. Hopefully you guys are not hearing those. Let's see. Ace-9 in the big blind is definitely a call, especially with a couple fish in the pot. I don't see a lot of value in re-raising out of position here. This looks like a pretty good 3-bet from the small blind. Again, I want it to be linear, but it also is going to be like a 20% 3-bet at least. So that hand should make it in. We get the min bets. Those are like merged or bluffs, or like air, just doing weird stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and raise it. And we have like a 3-card straight backdoor flush draw. So there's a lot of turns where we can just pretty much ship on this guy and continue barreling. That's obviously probably the best card in the deck that we just saw on the rabbit. For our specific hand, I don't know, 3-way range versus range analysis is not something I feel comfortable commenting on the fly at this point. Especially with 2 limped ranges, I would just say, in general, their ranges are very wide, and their minimum defense frequencies are going to be ridiculous for their range. So I think we can bet pretty much a lot. King 4 offsuit. Probably a tight fold. I think I played about 30 minutes before I started the video because I wanted to just finish up the session and then render. I think I've made a couple mistakes so far before the video started, including that fold, which I have no idea if that's actually a mistake or not. But our table tamer sizing didn't kick in. We're just going to go 3 streets here. Unless, I mean, again, most likely, if we have like a good 2-pair and our opponent calls a flop, which means he's going to have a lot of pairs in his range, which we don't expect him to fold a ton of pairs. So we want to just keep barreling. If there's like a river club or a queen or something terrible on the river that was not a terrible card, then we'll reevaluate, either make some sort of like small value block bet that we can fold or raise to, or check fold, knowing that he's going to check back pretty much anything that's not beating us, and almost never bluff, and probably not value bet worse. So I like that plan on that hand. Okay, sure. We're like 4-handed here, so I'm going to switch tables because I'm kind of overwhelmed enough right now with, like I said last video, with all the new topics, all the new data points and ideas that I'm trying to incorporate. Like, it's a lot, so not sure. Not really sure what we're doing. I guess we've got the nut flush, so we're really looking for him to call with any spades, so we can bet a little bit bigger and expect that his range there is probably very inelastic. A little fun term, meaning Whether we bet $2 or whether we bet $6, he probably calls about the same frequency. And therefore, I think the larger bet is good when we have the nut flush. And when he has a full house, he's going to raise regardless, and that's a smaller part of his range. Yeah, so I do think I've been making a few mistakes here and there, and yeah, just going through the hands and reviewing them after each session, clarifying what my thought process should be, what the what the most important data points are on each hand is going to help me continue getting better. Now, one question that I keep forgetting to ask because I keep thinking it's not that important. It probably is. So he checked back, let's bet 100% when he checked back the flop. And this will just fold. Although check raise might have been kind of nice there. A little light. It's going to stay 43, 36 here. We don't expect to fold too often. And I think we want to bet 100% here, but again, I'm not 100% comfortable with exactly how I should be adjusting to an aggro player. So I'm going to kind of just keep going with the default strategy. I would think his range is so wide in this spot that it's just his minimum defense is going to be challenging. Even though we have a pair, let's sort of ignore that for now until it matters and just go with what we think is like the easy exploit. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, what happens oftentimes I've noticed is I'll make the play a little bit quicker than I should, and then right after I'll immediately sort of see the data point that I should have been thinking about after the hand. Some of that could be results oriented. I believe, again, don't quote me on this, but I believe this is a good spot for a double barrel because he's going to call with a lot of pairs, and the 4 shouldn't connect too much with his like medium pairs or pair of kings. So here there are a couple missed draws because the 2 hearts, the 8 and king are like not really connected, but kind of. And he called twice on a turn that I think is slightly overfolded. So he did end up with the 8, and he called 2 streets with it, which is correct theoretically. And I'll mark that hand. Maybe that's a spot I should be triple barreling, but I thought because the turn should be the overfolded spot that I should not be firing the river, and I have an ace, so if he does have misdraws, I win. I think that's the right thought process. I think that hand was played correctly by me, but I'm going to mark it and check because, you know, when you see that, oh, I would have won by betting. Now, maybe I don't win by betting. Maybe against a 40-0, he's just not holding. That's a real thing. That's possible. This should be a massively overfolded flop. Again, this guy's 85. I actually think I can take one more shot at this. I mean, he's only got $9 behind, which is a perfect shove, which makes it a very easy fold, but I'm going to just keep betting because his range is just, it has to be so wide that he has to be coming up short a lot there. All right, so since I started recording, actually, things have started going a little better, which is always good. Always good. I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that I tend to have better sessions when I'm recording them because it really forces me to think through what I'm doing. 9-7 off. Again, we're going to look at like a, and I don't want to get too distracted. I really only use Flopzilla now just to look at pre-flop ranges. I don't actually plug stuff into it very often, if ever. But I was gonna say one thing to kind of look at is like what we would think an optimal 3-bet from the small blind would be. And I don't know if this guy's ever been 3-bet. Let's but we're like on the big blind. He's opening another gun. He's got $53. I'm kind of tempted to 3-bet here with ace-3, but you know, calling is going to be profitable for sure. Because I haven't actually challenged him on a 3-bet, I guess might be. I don't expect him to be folding very much, but I don't have any stats to back that up. I just know that 44 433s with 44% 3-bet don't overfold to 3-bets too often in general. So I think calling is fine. And we're just going to check this once we finally get the ability to. And 10 high board, it's probably a decent check raise. So let's do that. We've got a backdoor flush draw. We've got an ace. We've got some stuff that we can do. A4 is a little light. So just real quick, I think I still have snowy. Maybe I don't have snowy ranges in here anymore in my Flopzilla. Since my computer crashed, I may have lost some. However, Queen 5, 10 out of position versus a fish who's c-betting. I think this is a fold. I don't think that the queen and the 10 and the 2 clubs make it a little connected to be check raising out of position on that spot. Queen 4 suited looks like the nuts here. 4 is 3-bet. I don't even know if I 3-bet versus small blind. 3-bet. It's only 8%. Yeah, I don't have small blind defense ranges in my Flopzilla right now. So this should be a 3x. What's going on? Come on, table tamer. Get it together. We'll call. And that's a good check raise board. Or not a check raise, but I guess just a raise. I don't know why it's only going to 3, but I want it to go up to like 4. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm playing slow. It's probably irritating a lot of these guys, which isn't a huge problem for me. The pair on a low board, if he's floating with a lot of overs, even though I raised, could still be floating a fair amount. So I'll just bet again. And we do have like the king, you know, we can hit a king and will probably fold the rest of his overs and junk and stuff. He checks again. I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not really giving him an opportunity to bet. So if he has like ace-9 suited or a 5, or even like, God forbid, he has something like ace-queen, but yeah, he had the 9. That's fine. And bet, and fold, and I really am not intending to play so slow. So just to give you an idea of what I think my 3-betting range will look like. Let's get off this table. Let's see this kind of garbage. I sat out by accident. This table's not very good. And we're at 23 minutes, so I'm not going to play too much longer. I will try to sit on a table just to fill out the hands for the rest of the session. Again, this bottom left table for some reason is not functioning, or the player missing is screwing it up. I'm not sure which. So there's a 20% range. So to get Jack-8 suited into it, hands like that. I mean, I don't know if we need like a 40% 3-bet. I don't know if I agree with that. I would say, you know, I don't know, there's 30%. You can take some of this crap off. I don't think we need to be 3-betting that stuff. So ballpark figure. I think that's okay. And if you really wanted, you could take like some of these off. 25% 3-bet from the small blinds, probably okay, linear. Maybe take some of the small pairs off and just muck those too. So that's sort of what I've been thinking for a 3-bet range. Again, I don't really have any solid hard and fast numbers at this point. We get 2 checks here. I mean, 2 calls multi-way on this board is not, not a great spot. This guy's betting a 3rd pot. Again, we don't really know what he's doing. Remember that last hand he did this with what we suspected was a bit of a merged range. We never really got to see, but here we don't even have a made hand to call with, or even an ace high with like a gut shot. So we'll find out if this is a merge range or a value range right now, because he's getting raised with it, which is nice. Again, table tamer is not putting in the right bet size, so I just accidentally min raised. So if he had the nuts, I feel like he would have a easier decision. That sort of confirms what we already, I think, pretty much knew. I don't think we can be folding too many of this guy's 3 bets. King Jack offsuit, I guess, is pretty weak, small sample, but there's really, I don't think even after 23 hands, I don't think there's too much question about this being a very aggro player. Again, because he's betting so large on the flop and we're out of position, I think we could just fold. I think, like, if we're playing aggro, right, and then we're like c-betting 1/3, we put our opponent in really difficult spots because they have a higher like defense. They need to defend more against the 3rd bet. But when he's betting like closer to pot, then we just don't need to defend as often. Here we've got a gut shot. They all check through on the flop. That's going to be an auto bet. Even against 2 players with some equity, it should be pretty easy. And I think it's hard to know, right? But he checked through and then called the turn, which brought a few draws. There's flush draws out there. There are, now it's hard to not be biased about it being the correct play once he folds. However, I'm okay with it. Here we're out of position. If we value bet, does he ever call with worse? And I don't think he ever bets anything worse. So I think it's a check fold or a small value bet, but like, what are we targeting? Jack 9, a pair of 8s. Do we think he calls with 7-8 here? Maybe he calls like a $4 bet with 7-8, 450. Like something like that, right? I'm not saying 7-8, but 8s, 9s, 10s, Jack 7, something like that. I don't know what we're gonna see here, but I think it's. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Okay. Let's see. Again, I'm not sure. I know that this is probably a double barrel when we don't have a made hand. I guess it clarifies our action really well and probably gets us a nice check back on the river if we bet here with our 8s. And again, I think it's a bet if we have air, like 100%, because that 3 on the turn, all of his like floats, all of his sort of naked floats probably go away at that point. But when we have value, I think it's a little bit more confusing for me anyway. I'm not 100% sure that it's a double barrel with 8s there because we have so much showdown equity. However, I don't want to be facing a bet and another bet on the river. I don't think that's the right thought process. So I'm going to mark the hand and figure out exactly what I need to be thinking there. Because I don't think my thought process is very clear or accurate in that spot. So here we raised. So yeah, he bet, we 3-bet. So this is going to be a 3rd pot 100% of the time. if we get raised in this spot, pretty strange, right? I mean, I don't know, but I don't think it's not a fold. Can't be a fold. So it's just going to be a call, and then we'll see how the turn changes the board texture if we do get raised here. But it certainly isn't a fold, and we don't want to play too passive. That's a big raise. That, I mean, I have to be careful not to put myself in anybody else's shoes, because that is not a raise size I would use here if I had a jack. It's, you know, that's not the raise size I'm going for, but I don't know how other people are thinking, especially how a 31-5 is thinking. I mean, maybe he's thinking, I bet this amount so I can jam the turn. Which is, I think now he's betting $10. Again, like, if this was a regular, I think it's a pretty easy call. So what am I letting him? If he has a draw ever here, you know, do I fold the river? If it blanks off and then he shoves, do I fold the river? I don't think I can. Maybe I should, but I almost think like an all-in here is best, because he, like, his equity, like, I'm not going to be able to think through and explain why I think it's better right now. But if he's betting like some sort of weird merged range, which, like, I don't think his raise on the flop was very merged, but if he has some sort of like equity hand, then he might be like baited into calling, right? Like, he may be like, oh crap, now I need to call with like an open-ended straight draw or a flush draw or something like that. Or he might think I never do this with a jack and call with like ace-9. I have no idea. I mean, I guess we'll have to see. But if obviously another marked hand. Why is every hand so confusing now? I feel like I used to know how to play poker, and now I feel like I'm eternally confused on every single hand I play. So we got this guy that's never played a hand over betting, and we have a pair, and we're in position. Yeah, I mean, maybe we can find a fold here because of the sizing, but we don't. I think what I would say on this one is we don't have the confidence to know that he is. We don't have the confidence to know that he's doing this with like the right range of hands for us to fold. Let's make sure we get this raise in with our kings. Let's make sure that we check back here. And then, I mean, right, getting raised here is like really bad. Although, is it really that bad if we get raised here? Or is it fine? Because when we get raised here, like, we're just behind. I feel like it's the latter, and that we should bet to protect our hand. And I think this is a spot we can probably just bet 100% when he bets the flop, and then we call, and then we bet the turn. Yeah, like, I think that's just a bet 100% type opportunity. And even though we have the 9, it's not necessarily bad to do it anyway. Okay, so what happened? We 4-bet, and we got called twice, and we've got some deep stacks. So we want to bet like a quarter pot. That looks good. We don't want to like slow play this or check raise or anything. I don't think we can get away from this. I mean, we made a pretty big raise, so I think there's a few more high cards here than yeah, I don't know. Right, so like, does he call with worse? Like, the answer is yeah, he calls with 10s, jacks, queens in this spot. So I think we just shove. That's unfortunate. Okay, I think that's going to be my last round. we can check back and win with the ace sometimes. Oh, no, not flush. Okay. And we will sit down next blind. So I'm going to take a break, go back to studying for a little bit because that's pretty much all I do all day now is play and study. And mark some of these hands for review, and then I'll probably try to play another session this evening. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Went a little longer than I planned, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Questions or comments in the comments section, and I will try to respond when I get a chance. All right, thank you guys. This is YouRounder. Till next time, keep on grinding.